presentation that I put together for this meeting. My name is Suman Karthik. I've been with a company called Akamai Technologies for the past 10 years. I'm the senior manager for global programs and operations here in Akamai. I've been in the tech industry for about 15 years. I've done various roles, predominantly on the business side of the tech industry. So I don't know how to code. However, I did spend a little bit of time briefly in the engineering side of the business, but I can tell you I was not very successful. Where I definitely found my space and excitement and interest was more in product management, marketing, global expansions. Predominantly, my journey has been that of a program manager across all of these departments, where I got experience and I think my mojo, I could call it, in managing large programs and projects across different divisions, across different geographic locations. To tell you a little more about the company I work for, Akamai Technologies is a Boston-based company. We've basically, the way we define ourselves is we are the backbone of the internet. We serve about 85% of the total internet traffic. What it really means is when you type, say, facebook.com on your browser, the content that appears on your on your computer is basically served or delivered by Akamai. We've got how we do this. We have a huge platform and network. We have about 216,000 servers deployed across 15,000 networks across 120 countries. So typically, we ensure that the content that is coming to you, be it media files, be it softwares that you're downloading from the internet, or just plain browsing, your entire internet experience is enhanced by Akamai. As I said, we're talking about hundreds of terabytes of data that we manage and serve across the globe. What do I do? When I talked about being a program manager, being senior manager in global programs, predominantly the two focuses in my job. One of it is I'm responsible for ensuring that the way we operate in APAC market is very similar to how we run our business in EMEA or in Americas. That means I drive global consistency in our operating models across different businesses in the company. The other prong or the other big focus for me in Akamai is I head the corporate social responsibility division. What this group does is we ensure that we're a socially responsible company in India. So 2% of our net profit that we make in India goes towards charity, and that's the piece that I manage and I'm responsible for. I also head the communications chair for the India Diversity and Inclusion Council. What that really means is we want to create a more an environment which is friendly for women and for minorities in the company. It could be differently abled, it could be women, but we are committed in supporting, developing our workforce. So I run the communications chair, which means I take care of all the marketing and internal, external communications for this Diversity and Inclusion Council. Apart from that, a little more about who I am outside of Akamai. I love climbing mountains. The picture that you see is a year ago, I summited Mount Kilimanjaro, so that's me sitting on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. I love mountains. I'm also a scuba diver, so I dive across the globe. Apart from all of this, I'm married. I have a husband and a 9-year-old daughter and 2 crazy dogs. So that's all about me in a nutshell. Today, I kind of want to share with you my journey in Akamai, or my journey through 15 years of working in the tech industry. So it pretty much looks like this graph. There's ups, there's downs, and then there's up again. So this is at a very high level, right? So if you look at me, my career year by year, there are, every time there's a high in my personal life, looks like my career seems to have dipped a little bit. What it really means is I got married and my career took a back seat. When I
Suman,
say back
sorry
seat,
to interrupt. Suman, sorry to interrupt. I don't think a lot of people are able to view your screen.
oh, okay. Um, can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, now we can.
All right. Okay, perfect. So this is what my career graph looks like. So what I was talking about, going up and coming back down, and then going up again. The myth to me, and this is a huge learning over a course of 1.5 decades of working in the industry, was not always has my career gone on an upward trajectory or remained in the same plateaued growth. It's gone up, it's gone down, and funnily, it's always that growth or dip. It also coincides with my personal life. What it means is when I got married, in today's standard, pretty young. So I got married when I was 22, 23, just when I was starting my career, and it didn't go very far. My career was important, but it always took a backseat because my husband was traveling. I went to the US, so I had to figure out my ground there. I still had a job, but it was not my primary focus. But then things started changing when we came back to India, and I joined Akamai, and I said, okay, here are different things I want to be doing with my career. So every time I had to make a shift, be it marriage, be it a child, motherhood changed quite a bit for me. And then there were other aspects that came in and left my personal life, which was a reflection on my professional career too. Now, and I've always been faced with, every time there's a huge change, the first thing that I would have to ask myself is, do I want to give up my career? Should I put this in the back seat? And then when things stabilize, for example, when motherhood happened, my daughter came along, the big challenge was, do I want to stay at home and focus on my daughter, or can I get a career option where I can work from home, but still manage my job as well as, take care of my daughter? So every time I had to make these decisions, there was this whole cyclic approach I had to take. I had to reinvent myself, be it while starting a new job, or be it making a decision to put my career at a back seat. So kind of some of the pieces, the next slide I want to show you is my huge development process that I want to share with you. There were 4 key elements in it. One was knowing myself, or knowing yourself in this case, which predominantly means that when you have rediscovering yourself, that is, when you're going through this whole cycle, there are certain things that remain unchanged, like your values, your interests, your strengths, your traits, your ambition remains unchanged pretty much through your career graph, and which is true for me at least, because nobody is going to hire me for my weakness, so it's always my strengths that I have to focus on. My interests and my values remain unchanged. My ambition to go to the next level is still there, irrespective of whether my career is taking a backseat or it's going full stream. It remained unchanged. I still wanted to go ahead, maybe not for the first 2 years, maybe year number 3 I wanted to do it, but that piece remained unchanged. It was a lot of self-discovery process that I go through and I've gone through over the past 15 years also. Once I've been there, I know what my strengths, my interests, and my values are, then I looked at exploring options. Where do I want to go next? In the beginning of this whole presentation, I talked about how I've changed to different roles. I've been in marketing. My last job I was heading marketing for Akamai's EMEA business. Before that, I was in product marketing. Before that, I did corp dev. So there are different jobs that I've done within Akamai. But to get to these jobs, I had to figure out whether or not, what my career options were, what kind of research I needed to do, what is the industry doing. If I were to leave Athma and go and apply for a job elsewhere, will I get that? Does this job also give me flexibility that I need while my child is growing up? Do I have to travel? Do I need to be traveling 75% of my time? Those were the options that I had to think through before I said, okay, this is where I want to go next. So the next 3 years I will do marketing, or next 3 years I will do product marketing. These are elements that I had to do from a research perspective and exploring options. After which was getting focused, which I think is very, very critical. I'm sure most of you will agree with me, because you would have gone through your whole, identifying your strength, your interest, and your ambition, doing your research on where you potentially can fit in, and then getting focused, which is always harder, because this is where you need to set your goal. This is where you say, who are the people I want to network with to be able to apply for a job? What kind of skills do I actually need to start acquiring to be able to qualify for a job? That's where narrowing down the options made a lot of sense. And the last piece was taking action, actually going and talking to people, the hiring managers. Most of my jobs internally has been internal. However, the process remains unchanged. I still had to interview for a job within the company. I still had to apply through the system. Some of them were also, I had to make sure that I gained certain skills. For example, when I moved from Corp Dev, which is basically merger acquisition team, where I did a lot of research work, into marketing, like the whole growth was towards marketing, I had to gain skills. I had to learn how do you market in the B2B space? How do you market? What does marketing really mean? The core principles, all of that was a huge learning for me. And those were skills that I had to acquire before I actually went and applied for the job. So that's the taking action, the last piece. This circle is pretty much what I go through every 2-3 years. Every time I have to reinvent myself, either to look for another job, another department that I want to move to, or whether I want to pick up a laid back, a more comfortable role for a couple of years so I can focus on my personal life. So that's the constant balancing act that I've been doing. And this is pretty much what that whole circle looks like. With this, I think this is my last slide. I would like to open up for questions now. If you have any questions, comments, do feel free to ask now.
Great, thanks, Suman. I think a lot of us can relate to what you've gone through and your career journey. And I think a lot of us here are also looking for some kind of advice from your end on specific challenges that we are facing, right, in our career. So you can go ahead. Either if your audio is not working, you can type in your question in the chat window, or you could unmute yourself and ask your question. Thanks.
Hi, Suman. Good morning. This is Soumya here, Soumya TV. To just introduce myself, I have about 13 years of experience in the software testing industry, and I had worked as a QA manager in Genpact. I took a break in March 2016 due to some family commitments. I would like, my first question is, how is the scenario today for software testing for people like us who have taken a career break?
Thank you very much, Soumya, for your question. It's lovely to meet you. Today, I believe, and I did some research because I went back to our HR, the talent acquisition team, to understand this, especially from a hiring perspective. Being in the industry for 13 years, you will know that Q4 is typically a slowdown time for everybody. Most companies are kind of rolling back. are going to have to go back into their planning phases. But Q1 is when the market is going to, I believe, open up, and especially from engineering and testing perspective, this is the time that you're actually coming back at the right time, because this is when the market is going to start priming up to open up for more jobs.
Okay. I just would like to ask you, does Akamai have any opportunities for us for software testing people?
It does, definitely, because we're constantly hiring. We're about, if you were in Genpact, I think we're in the similar tech park, or at least I know there's a Genpact office in the tech park that we work in. Yes, we have a lot of opportunities right now opened up, and there's a new group of engineering that we're going to be setting up shortly. What you could do is look up our career page on our website. And I think it's a fairly easy process for you to be able to apply and go through the interview process and the selection process.
Okay, okay. And basically, for I'm just asking, for companies like Akamai, you said the technology is that you are into the internet part of it and all. What is the skills that we need to acquire from the IT perspective?
Okay, typically we work on the networking side of the business, right? So when we look at networking side, there are a couple of engineering teams that you could potentially look at. One of it is the enterprise side of the business, which is predominantly building internal systems and tools. The other one is product development side, which is predominantly on the analytics side of the world. When I say analytics, this is because we serve millions of hundreds of terabytes of data. We have all of this data that we kind of crunch this data to make it into meaningful data for our customers to consume. For example, when you talk about the Olympics that we served, or even the US elections that happened recently, or the amount of media streaming that we did, there's a lot of data that we gathered during the streaming of the US election, right? Now, what we do here in India is we analyze the data and make that into a streaming analytics tool that is built out of the Bangalore office. And that tool is either sold, right now we're in beta testing mode, so we actually invite our customers to try this tool. Eventually, what we want to do is we want to be able to productize this and sell it to our customers. So from a technical skill set perspective, networking skills is essential. Internet, typically we look for C, C++ from a development perspective. But that's one half of the world. The other half of it is around vanilla skills that we hire, but this is primarily to support our enterprise tools like the Salesforce integration, etc. From a testing perspective, I don't know. What I can do is look up and talk to or connect you to the HR, and you can have a conversation there with them. Does that help?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, we've got one more question from Deepthi in the chat window. She says, I'm upgrading my technical skills in IT after 3 years break, before which I did my master's in computer science from UK. Before that, I have 3 years experience. So now I will have to almost join as a fresher, and I'm somehow not confident to compete with the current passouts who are more exposed and in touch with current skills. Do you think that would be a barrier?
Essentially I don't, and again, my experience and my knowledge comes and it's slightly myopic, Deepthi. So essentially, I'm going to talk more from an Akamai perspective, right? What we do when we hire people is especially at the entry levels and junior levels, we look for aptitude and attitude. If those two are there, lack of skills are something that we can very easily compensate. We have very, very rigorous onboarding programs, training programs that we put most people through. So I don't believe that is going to be a challenge at all. And that, I think, holds good for most companies unless they're specifically looking for a certain skill set.
I hope that answered your question. You could unmute yourself if you want to ask or any other question. There's one more question on our offline chat that's come up, which says, I've attended multiple interviews, and one reason why many of the offers didn't materialize was because of my request to offer flexibility. Is it okay to ask the employer for flexibility right at the time of interview, or is it considered as a negative question to ask?
My take is it's okay to ask for flexibility. And typically what happens is, and I'll give you from a very employer perspective, usually when you've come on board and you've proven yourself, and then you turn around and ask for flexibility, it's a lot easier for an employer to say yes to it. And I can give you my personal example. I worked out of home. I have a child with special needs, so I worked out of home for the first 5 years of her life. And in India, Akamai did not really have a work from home option at all. So they had to change the rules and the policy to support my ask. And I had a genuine reason. And then I had already a proven track record in the company. So that was not a brainer for them to consider me as a one-off option. However, what it actually turned out was over a period of time, a lot of people in the company, as the company started maturing here in India, a lot of our women employees became new moms. There were a lot of changes that were happening in their family lives, and to support that, we've started offering flexibility in terms of work from home. There are certain roles which will require the employee to be in the office, so we do 50% of their work happens in the office and the other 50% happens remote. So flexibility is something that is given. However, when the challenge is going to, and I'm going to be honest here, the challenge is when you're interviewing for a job and when you ask, some companies may not look at it very positively simply because their roles probably demand the employee is here in the office for 8 or 9 hours. But most companies today, especially in India, and as we talk about it in different NASSCOM forums and the DNI forums that happen across India, that is changing. So my take is, if you have a strong reason that you need the flexibility, you should be open about it at the time of interview, because by the time you prove yourself and then in your new role and then ask for flexibility, it'll be 2 years and may not even be relevant anymore. So you're going to put yourself through a lot of stress. Instead, it's good to be open and honest about it and ask for it in the beginning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, which is something that we've also sort of figured out in JobSpot, that there are a lot of companies who openly have flexi time policies, and it's pretty much out there in their HR policies on their website. So another way of looking at it would perhaps be to look at the company, look at their HR policies, look at the kind of benefits that they have for women, and then ensure that your needs are met before you even go for an interview. I think Pratibha has another question. Hi Suman, nice to listen to your talk. My question is, if one is looking for a career shift, for example, from tech to product management after a break, how acceptable is it by the industry and how should one go about it?
Hi Pratibha, that's a really, really good question. And I think that's a question that I get asked quite a bit. It is, the industry as such is open to it. The industry is very accepting, especially because product management, product marketing, these are roles that are fairly new compared to the traditional roles like engineering and marketing or sales. So today it's a very popular stream that most people seem to want to go towards. However, when you're looking from a tech to a business role, there are a bunch of skills that I think are imperative for a person to acquire. Some of it is soft skills. Like when I say soft skills, these are understanding business, understanding the trends in the market, understanding what product marketing and product management is slightly different and very different, actually, on the opposite end of product development, right? So when you look at the business, you look at it from a very different lens versus how you would as an engineer. So that skill gap is what needs to be learned and understood. Now, the way I would personally spin it would be the 3 years or 4 years that you are on a break, you acquire those skills, do your reading, attend seminars. There's so many different forums in the city, especially in Bangalore, that you can actually be a part of, and that's where you learn. And then applying for a job or during your job interview process, this knowledge comes extremely handy. Not doing this skill gap analysis and trying to fill the gap will mean that it becomes increasingly difficult to be able to crack those interviews. Does that answer your question? Hello?
Okay, she said it looks like, yeah.
I have a question, Suman.
Hi.
This is Soumya again. As part of the product management or the project management perspective, would you suggest any certifications that we need to take up?
There are a lot of certifications that are available in the market today. Typically, I would still recommend, just given how the Indian market is, they prefer a premium brand, right? So if you look at an IIM, XLRI, they have a lot of short-term courses and certifications that they offer. Definitely worth exploring because those premium brands add weight to your resume. And the knowledge that you gain, especially because some of these short-term courses are classroom-based courses, which are really, really good because it helps you also network with other people in the industry.
Great. I think Lisa had a question to ask.
Yes. Good morning, Suman and the team. A very knowledgeable session. Actually, I'm in a different boat, actually. I returned from UK last year in April, and since then, I've been earnestly searching out for a job. I have 15 years of experience, of which 10 years have been in project management and test management. Somehow, I'm worried that I haven't got through the interviews, whichever I have attended, and at the same time, there are no calls coming up to me, which is kind of disappointing after having 15 years of experience, having a master's degree, having the required certifications like Prince2 practitioner and relevant testing certifications as well related to test management. I'm really not knowing what is the reason for me to not get placed. So if you look at it, it's been 17 months now continuously that I'm not having a job. After returning from UK, it makes me think, was my decision to go to UK and work as a project manager or a program manager there was a wrong decision? Could you please advise on what could be my problem and how can I, improve my situation, just so that, I have a daughter to bring up. I'm a single parent, so it's really getting too difficult for me financially. So that's the reason I attended the seminar as well.
Okay. Lisa, thank you so much for sharing this, right? And I'll tell you what, while you were talking, and I think this is a fear for most people, most senior folks in the industry today, right? Or when you look at what happens if we get laid off, the business shuts down, or when you relocate from a different country and then you're looking for an option, especially in skill sets, especially with the number of years of experience that you bring to the table. The challenge with I wouldn't even call it challenge, right? One of the things that at that level that really, really works is to build your network. Most senior positions in the industry are connected with networking, right? It's who you know in a company, who can you network with, how do you apply for these jobs? Because when you apply through the regular portals, your resume will get lost because there are people with similar skill set with half the experience and half the cost that they will cost a company to hire. However, one of the things, and I would strongly recommend, and this is something that's very, very dear to my heart, and I'm a huge champion of it, even in the company that I work in, is women as such, we don't network. We're very shy to go out there, put ourselves in forums, in seminars, simply because we don't really like to put ourselves out there. So one of the challenges we've constantly seen, especially with senior members, is once they reach a comfort zone, they don't want to go out there and put themselves out there. So one of the options for you to think about is, have you started, how strong is your network in the city? Have you met, it's one thing, the people that you're currently meeting are, I'm presuming, talent acquisition teams in different companies, but there are other people that you should be talking to. Project managers, directors who run these programs. Where do you meet them? You meet them in seminars. You meet them in events that happen across the city. So there is the developers forum that happens. There is the startup conventions that happen. Are you a part of all of these groups? Either from a mailing list perspective or from attending physically these events. If not, I would strongly recommend you start there. And when you put yourself out there and start meeting people is when you will realize what are the hiring managers actually thinking about and what are they looking for. Does your skill set that you bring to the table actually fit there, or do you need to add more, or do you need to tweak that to make sure that you land in roles that you desire? Does that help you, Lisa? Does it answer your question?
Oh, yes, it helps a lot. The seminars would actually help me in getting in touch with and we can openly ask them, is it that, I'm looking for such kind of a role, would you be able to help? Is that a good conversation to have with the people we meet?
Not so. When you first time meet people, most people don't want to be asked the question, are you hiring, right? What you would start with is understanding the industry, the company that they're working for, what kind of work do they do. That is the kind of conversations you should be driving. And I know the underlining aim is to figure out if the person is hiring. But before that, you want to be able to connect, right? You want to be able to create an impression, connect, and understand if that's the kind of company or that you want to be working for, or that's the kind of job, or that's the kind of person you want to be working for. So typically, when we go to these kind of events, the networking events, and this is, again, when we prep people, even in our company, the Grace Hopper event is happening soon. One of the things we do is we encourage them not to go solicit for jobs. However, we tell them that they should learn and understand what their businesses are doing, what industry they're working in. That internally will help you learn and figure out if that's the kind of place you want to be in. And when you come back, you can obviously drop an email or a call and say, hey, you know what, I was really excited to meet you here. I'm looking for opportunities. Here's the skills that I bring in. Here's the experience I bring in. Do you see any role that I can potentially apply? So what you do then is you're changing the conversation a little bit, and that person will be interested in referring you to the company too. Because he or she has already met you, so there is an impression that you've already created. And then when you have a conversation about wanting to apply, you're changing that equation a little bit, because you're making sure that you created a good impression, you had the right kind of conversation, showcased your interest subtly and your knowledge for him or her to be able to then go and refer.
Yes, Suman, that gives lots of information. Thank you very much for your advice.
You're welcome.
Right. So there is one more question, and we can perhaps take one more question before we close the session. So there's one question on our chat window again. It says, I've been in the marketing domain for the past 6 years, and I want to shift into a CSR role in an organization and be part of a team that impacts lives directly. What are the core skills that are required, and does relevant experience matter for a role like this?
That is a very, very good question, simply because that's the point I was in early this year. So I was heading marketing in Akamai for an entire geo. So I had these teams that I was running. There was a lot of travel. All of that was great. And at some point last year, actually it started last year during the Chennai floods, is when it hit me that there's more to life than just corporate rat race. And that's when I started exploring avenues in the CSR space. I did a couple of things, and I'm going to talk about my journey, and I'm hoping this will kind of give you the answer you were looking for. So I've been volunteering with different organizations for the past 10, 11 years. However, pursuing a career in the CSR space was never a career focus for me, or not even an ambition for me for the longest time. But I think as I went through this whole journey, what I did learn is there is so much more to life than just running this corporate rat race. I looked at different options. I looked at going and volunteering. I did a lot of volunteering work in the admin side of NGOs. I've done fundraising. And from that point, I'm managing funds for different NGOs too, by running events for them. That kind of helped me bring that with my marketing skills, is what I went back to Akamai and I said, there is a mandate today that every corporation in India needs to spend 2% of their net profit towards CSR. And in Akamai, we really hadn't, and this has been there since 2014. And in Akamai, we've not really done anything. In fact, we do one annual community care day, and that's only one day in a year. So what I did was I went back to the management and I said, hey, we've got all of this. We've got all of this money sitting. You need someone who understands the social sector and somebody who can come with a proper business plan on how we're going to disperse these funds. What does the impact mean? How does it resonate with our Akamai's mission critical goals? And how does it actually impact our brand in India, right? So that opened a lot of doors for me, and I was given a free hand to say, okay, go figure out what does Akamai's purpose in the CSR space need to look like. That's the journey that I took. I officially started the role only in August, but I started working on a business plan and how we're going to do this, what kind of partners do we look at. All of that has been going on since May. So I brought in a lot of the business aspect, the skills that I already had, with a lot of learning from the social sector also, because the social sector does not really work like corporate. They speak different languages, they work very differently. So building that bridge between the two is what I do right now. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I think, and it's good to have that perspective. Anybody else asking a question before we close the session? One last question, maybe.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, Suman. See, you were talking about an event in Akamai. I don't remember some event that you mentioned in the previous conversations. Is it open for Yeah, is it open for people like us? When does
Yes.
it happen usually?
Grace Hopper, so there are a couple of things that we do. Grace Hopper is an international conference for women in technology. It's scheduled, I think it's a paid event.
Yes, and
Anita,
December, right?
yes. Yeah, it's happening December. Early December is when it's a 2-day conference that's happening. Definitely a great place for you to, especially if you are in technology space and you want to learn more about what's going on, what are women doing in the technology space, as well as look for jobs. It's a great place to actually go and participate. The other one that we host in Akamai, an external event that we host in Akamai, is the Lean In Circle. This is the Sheryl Sandberg's women circles that she's created. So there is a Bangalore chapter. So I think every 2 or 3 months, we host one session in the office here. It's on Saturday. There's one coming up in December, 3rd of December, between 3 and 6 p.m. So what this does is we have women from different walks of life, right? They're not primarily, they don't necessarily have to be in the IT space. There are researchers, there are loads of different people from different backgrounds. These are working women who come and participate in the Lean In Circle. It happens every month. It's hosted in different companies. The December one we're hosting in our office. We do different workshops during the session. So we're still working on the agenda right now for what's going to happen. We bring an external coach or a speaker for the workshop and host it in different offices. So it's definitely something for you to look at if you're looking at building your network and socializing and understanding what's going on in the market and kind of get a pulse of it. It's a great place to come and check it out.
Suman, it's been fantastic. I hope a lot of them had a lot of inputs that they could take back and sort of rework their career goals and rework their restart journey. So thanks, Suman, and thanks everybody for participating.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting all of you. I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
All right, thanks.